Today we're talking about how a very, very, very basic understanding of economics can help anyone create new income sources very easily. Because it's kind of astounding how the majority of people think this is a difficult thing to do, when in reality it's quite simple. How to monetize what you already know how to do or own in some way. Turn it into a form of currency, because that's what monetizing means, making money from it. Money is just currency. I prefer to use the term currency because it kind of depersonalizes it. We have a lot of cultural associations, emotional associations with the concept of money. We like deify it. And if we just call it currency, it kind of detaches it, makes it more objective and technical, as we'll get into. So, question number one, we've talked about this before. What is wealth?
The things that we have
The things that we have
include money, and not just money, everything. The car, the ability that we have to earn money or get the sources. Sources are the wealth.
Sources.
Like food.
Sources.
Yeah.
Okay, so most people think the most important form of wealth is one, currency. This chalk sucks. Or maybe this board sucks, I don't know. Maybe I suck. That's the third ingredient here, currency. Most people think currency is the most important form of wealth, and that's all that they focus on. I need currency, I need currency, I need currency. You see how silly it sounds when I say currency instead of money? Because we're so used to talking about money, like, yeah, everybody needs money, like, duh. Money's so important, but if you say currency, it sounds a little bit silly, because what the fuck is currency? It's just a number, right? And that's not true. And then the second way that most people will think of wealth after currency is what I would call commodities, like things that have a standard utility value of some kind, like a barrel of oil is a commodity that everybody uses in some way. Gold is a commodity. Precious metals are commodities, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into the more obvious things, like you mentioned a car, cars and houses, and most of the shit you own, right?
Baby ducks.
Yes, baby ducks would be okay. All this falls into the general category consumption goods, things that give us something that we immediately use. A car gives us the ability to go somewhere. A house gives us shelter. A baby duck gives us hours of entertainment, meat and eggs, eventually, right? So, 3, consumption goods. And then after that, they would start to think of, well, like, what about things that don't necessarily give me any kind of immediate value, but I use to get other things I want? Like a drill, or a hammer, or a saw, right? Those are tools. Nobody wants the drill or the hammer or the saw, usually, just for that thing in itself. They do something else valuable with it. They create the consumption goods with it, because if you need to build a car or a house, you need tools to help you do that. We'll call that capital goods. Capital is stuff you use to make or do other stuff. And most people would say, okay, that's it. Those are the 4 types of wealth you can have. And they're wrong, because there are 2 others.
2 others?
Yes. So it's funny, because so far I've been going in an order that most people would think they're getting less and less important, like money. The most important than these other things are derivatives. They come after money, right? Because most of your transactions, what do? You start with money, and then you acquire one of these other things, right? You buy gold or a barrel of oil. You buy a car. You buy a drill, right? But we'll see why that's actually logistically backward, because you need all these things to eventually have currency that is valuable in any way, shape, or form. Think about it, because money by itself, if none of these other things existed, if the only thing that existed was money, currency, that would be completely useless, right? Do you see what I mean? Yeah. If you just had a giant pile of $1 billion and nothing you could spend it on, it would just be paper, right?
Yeah.
So you need all these other things before the currency has any value, right? But everybody thinks a bit backward. But there are 2 other things that come before these 4 things that are even more important, and they're the most neglected, that nobody thinks about. Because they're intangible, they're invisible. You can't hold them, but they're the source of these other 4 things. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about, class? Any idea? What are the two things I'm talking about that make it possible to have these other four things? Okay, I'll just give them together as one, even though they're actually two different things. 5, skill. And what comes even before skill? What do you have to have before you can have a skill?
Time.
Any idea? I mean, yeah, you have to exist. So like time and space would be like the foundation of everything before what I'm talking about. But knowledge.
Yeah.
Think about it. Okay? What is knowledge? This is the foundation of all wealth. And eventually, through this, you end up with this. Skill is just a way that you apply knowledge with your body. Do you see what I mean? You know how to weld. The knowledge starts here, and then you use your hands to do it. And you'll also have some capital goods like a welding machine to apply that skill with, right? You need tools appropriate for the skill, right?
Yeah.
And then through welding, you build a piece of furniture or something. I don't know what people weld, but you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a consumption good. You've gone from the knowledge of how to weld, the skill in your body. Like if I broke your hand or something, you'd still know everything about welding. It'd still be in your brain, but your hands, your skill wouldn't be working, right? You could explain to someone else how to weld, but you couldn't do the welding, right?
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay? And then they'd use a welding machine to build some kind of thing that you use, like furniture or some shit out of metal. That's your consumption good. And these two things are derivatives of those other things. Because both currencies and commodities you don't use just for the thing in themselves, right? If you have a bunch of iron ore, you're not buying it just to have a bunch of iron ore. You're buying it to be transformed into some kind of useful form using these other four things. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Right. You getting it now? You seeing the logical connection between all these things now?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I ask a simple question like, I need a new way to make currency, to make money, I need to acquire more of this thing that's a derivative of the other 5 things, where should you start your strategizing? At what point in these 6 things I've listed do you think you should start with?
Knowledge.
Yeah, you should start with knowledge. What do you know?
Yeah.
What do you know? And a direct offshoot of that, what can you do? Skill. What do you know? What can you do? Knowledge and skill.
Actually, I know a lots of people that they have knowledge, but just knowledge.
Okay.
They don't have a skill, or let's say they have the knowledge, but they don't know how to sell the knowledge. Not necessarily to be a welder, but to know how to be a teacher, for example.
So we're getting now into levels 5 and 6 up here, right? Which, how do I take these things that I have and exchange them for currency? That's what you mean when you say sell something, right? So again, all these jargony terms that we've learned, right, about buying and selling and profits and losses and marketing and sales and all that, what you're really just saying is, how do I exchange knowledge for currency?
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're saying when we say I need a new way to make money. How do I exchange one of these things for currency?
Yeah.
Well, it's very easy. You find someone who has currency and wants the thing you have. And you say, I'll give you this if you give me that. And if you both agree, it happens. Right? That's it. That's every sale, every purchase that's ever happened in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Nice.
I mean, it's really quite simple when you break it down to its essential elements, right? Yet so many people have no idea what the fuck they're doing up here, right? Everybody's struggling to make ends meet or they get fired from the job. They're like, oh no, I'm completely incapable of acquiring currency because the one source I had is gone now. See, I didn't even say making money there. I said acquiring currency because it makes it sound even stupider, right? How do I acquire currency, right? So if you suddenly find that you wish to acquire more currency than you were previously acquiring, what kind of questions do you think you should start asking yourself?
We have a lot of people behind the camera, but nobody wants to talk.
Nobody wants their voice in the video. This is the only one brave enough.
Why I cannot sell them? No.
And so what?
Like the question is like, why I cannot have a good currency?
Why you want, well, good currency, you want more currency.
More currency, right? Yeah. I don't know.
Well, First question I would ask myself, that I have asked myself many times, and it's a universal question that will apply to all people in all situations, even though the answer will be different for each person, is what do I know how to do? What do I know? What can I do? And if I can answer those questions, then I'd go to another question, which is like, what tools do I have at my disposal to help me accomplish those things that I know how to do?
Mm-hmm.
And the answers aren't always obvious because you're not used to thinking in these terms, right?
Yeah.
A tool is anything that helps you accomplish something you want to do, right?
Right.
Okay. One of my first jobs in Southern California, when I was 16, I started freelance guitar teaching, which I actually did quite well and made a lot of money for a 16-year-old. And all I did was, I was a guy who knew how to play the guitar pretty well, and I had a guitar. That was my tool, right? You don't think of a guitar as a tool usually, right? Think of guitar as something to play and have fun or attract sexy ladies with, or whatever people use guitars for, right? But you wouldn't think of it as a tool like you would a hammer or a drill or a welding machine typically, right? But it's a tool I'm using to accomplish some goal, which in this case was the education of how to play the instrument, right?
Right.
Right? And I also, even if I didn't have the guitar, which has happened before, like one time my car was stolen in Tijuana, Mexico, and my guitar was in the trunk of my car. A true story. And I had to teach a bunch of lessons and I had to acquire a new guitar really quickly. But even if I didn't have the physical guitar to play and demonstrate, right, I could still explain pretty damn well because I have the knowledge of how to play the guitar, like any decent guitar player, but also one of my skills was articulation, the ability to put things into words very clearly, which is what made me a good teacher. See, not everybody who knows how to play the guitar knows how to teach the guitar, right? So that's a separate skill, right? Plenty of people who were better at guitar than me still are, obviously, but I was very, very good at articulating what I knew, right? So that's a skill. Aided by me having a guitar as a tool of production, of producing musical education.
Sure.
Right? By through demonstrating what I'm talking about, right?
Right. It's a nice pattern, actually.
Yeah, you will find every single source of wealth in the world that eventually results in currency, money, big dollar sign, yeah, money, 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 I'm on $1 billion. All of it originates here. It goes through this process. All of it, no exceptions. Unless you're robbing someone, that's different. That's not producing value, that's stealing value. I could put a gun to your head and say, give me all your money. Obviously, that bypassed the whole thing and went straight to the currency, right? You're not producing anything new by doing that. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. We could do that too. I mean, we could just put that as another option. Just, fuck all this, buy a gun, rob someone. Problem solved. There you have currency, right? But you haven't produced wealth, but you have acquired currency. So, produce wealth, exchange it for currency. That's it. That's the whole equation. That's economics in a nutshell. This is so fucking hard for people, right? They don't think in these terms.
Yeah. Now, it's funny, like at least 3 ideas immediately came to my head. I have some knowledge about a lots of things that is not my job, but I spend a time, I spend a lot of money, and now I am professional on, for example, buying the mountaineer stuff.
Okay.
Maybe I can sell this.
So how many people, when you tell them something like this, will say, but I don't know how to do anything. I don't know anything. Really? So you're identical to every other person. Your mind, there is no knowledge in your mind or skill in your body that is not identical to every other person, right? Because that's literally what you're saying. If you say, I don't know how to do anything. You don't know anything. Like, I would never have a reason to ask your advice on something.
Yeah.
Because if I'm asking your advice, it implies that I think you know something that I don't, right?
Definitely.
So that's an example of knowledge or skill, right?
Yeah.
What you're just not used to thinking of is, how do I exchange this for currency, right? How do I find somebody who has currency and wants what I have enough that they're willing to give me some of that currency?
One more time.
What you're not used to thinking of is, how do I find someone who has currency, has money, right? Enough money that they're willing to exchange some of that money for the valuable knowledge or skill that I have.
Sure. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's really fucking simple. Really fucking simple. It applies to the first world, the third world. If there are ever human beings colonizing Mars, it'll apply there. It'll apply everywhere human beings are making decisions and seeking to acquire value. It's a universal concept. It's a law of nature.
So, we should learn how to sell our knowledge.
Yes, which means, again, when you say sell, that's a scary word for some people. I'm not a salesperson, right? What you mean is, how do I exchange my knowledge, skill, or tools of some kind, capital and consumption goods, for someone else's currency? Under what conditions would somebody be willing to give me currency? excluding the gun option. Obviously, you can convince anyone to do anything if you threaten them enough, right? So ignoring that option, under what conditions would somebody be willing, happy even, not like begrudging, fine, I guess I'll give you some money, but happy to give me some of their currency? Well, are you ever happy to give someone else some of your currency? Has that ever happened before in your life, that you're happy to give someone else some of your currency? What do you think? Can you think of any times in your life you've been happy to give someone some of your currency? No? It's never ever happened in your entire life?
No, for me it's happened a lot.
Yeah, for most people it happens daily, right? It means you spend money.
Actually, my problem is like I'm more interested into give my currency for something, but I cannot take the people's currency enough. Or
right. And it's the same thing. You're just on the other side of the equation, right? But for some reason, there's this weird self-consciousness that comes with like asking for money for things. Like you're happy to give other people money, but you don't want to take their money. You think you're like harming them in some way, or you're being greedy, or mercantilist, or money is like a necessary evil and you should avoid it at all costs. So if you can get something done without taking money for it, you should absolutely avoid taking money.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how the Armenians think. It's all the post-Soviet people think, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right? Because capitalism is evil, right? It makes people greedy, right? No, it's just a tool. Currency is just a tool to facilitate economic exchange. That's all it is. It's a number that makes it easier to give and take things and not lose in the process, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Very simple. You are happy to give people currency every time you buy something that you don't have if you see that it is the best way to acquire the thing that you don't have, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe you don't buy things, you don't spend currency on things if you have other ways to acquire those things. We have a thriving greenhouse now, so I don't buy very many vegetables now, except for the ones that I'm not growing in the greenhouse. But the amount of, I used to be happy to give my currency to the people at the grocery store and take their lettuce and other vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Because at the time, that was the best way I had to acquire lettuce and other vegetables that I wanted to consume, that I considered valuable, right? And never once did I say, damn, I can't believe these people expect me to give them currency for the lettuce they're selling. Can you believe the nerve of these people, right? Now I don't need to because now I'm growing my own, right? So I found an alternative, but at the time that currency functioned as a medium of exchange. That's exactly what it's for. It's not for sitting in a bank account saying, look how big the number in my bank account is. It's for acquiring things that I want, that I can't produce for myself, right?
Right. And have it fresh. Like
yes.
Better quality.
Yes, now I have better quality, fresher vegetables, right? So there are other reasons too, because it's not fungible. They're not the same quality vegetables or even the same vegetables, right? But so the point is, we're always in this eternal process of trying to acquire the things we want, and money is just a tool for helping us do that, right? And you are happy to employ that tool anytime you perceive that it is the best way to get the things that you want. So now just reverse that equation. Under what conditions is somebody going to be happy to give you some of their currency? Exactly the same conditions, when they perceive that it is the best way for them to get something they want, something that you have, right?
Yeah.
So now the question just becomes, what do you have?
Exactly.
What do you have here? Not necessarily in your hands, although even that might surprise you. If you take stock of everything you own, you might realize you have a lot of tools at your disposal that you take for granted, right?
Right.
Even if you don't consider yourself a wealthy person or have a full workshop full of tools or whatever, right? So this and this combined together, you have something that somebody somewhere on the planet, because it's not even constrained to local conditions anymore, because we don't live in villages anymore, right? We have cars and we have the internet and we have International Postal Service, right? Yeah. So it's 8 billion people is your potential market, right? Does somebody somewhere on this planet have enough currency and want something that I have? And can I somehow find a way to communicate with them and make that exchange happen?
Sure. So simple.
So simple. So, yet people will argue about this and spend their entire lives trying to solve this problem over and over and over again, right? And it's a catastrophe anytime they lose their job. It's like, oh no, my currency is gone. How will I ever acquire more?
Yeah. Now I want to sell something. It was funny after this conversation that we had. I want to sell my knowledge about what to buy for as a beginner mountaineer or a cycle tour, because I saw a lot of people buy the very expensive tools, and after that they will collapse in the middle of the journey because they cannot fix it. It's very expensive.
So yeah, that knowledge of how to fix it,
Or
right?
how to and not because I have the best things, because I know what exactly not to buy. If you want to buy a boots or a backpack, for example, and it was very funny after this conversation. Maybe for 10 minutes I can sell my knowledge for $1, but still it's like I never thought about this, that I have something. It's a knowledge. I know what to buy right now, and a lot of people doesn't know. So instead of buying a wrong boots for $200, I can give you good advices for $1, and you can buy the right one, and you won't lose $200, for example. And yeah, I never think about I have a lot of knowledge to take somebody's currency.
Yes, take it all. Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah, it was very nice. Yeah, it shouldn't be very long because it's like repeating and repeating.
Yes.
It would be.
Roseanne, any questions about acquiring currency? No? You already knew all this because you're an economics major, right? You have a piece of paper that says you know all this? Yeah? Okay. So today's lesson was taken from the first few chapters of my book, Everyone is an Entrepreneur, Selling Economic Self-Determination in a Post-Soviet World, where I talk about my perception as a Westerner living in post-Soviet Armenia of how the people here do not understand the most basic economic concepts and how it is holding them back as individuals and as a culture and as a nation. But even Westerners, if they read this book, will probably be surprised by some of the basic economic concepts I identify and how they can apply in your lives, even when you consider that you come from an economically advantaged country like a good old United States of America. God bless America.
God bless America.